Okay, good evening, everybody, and welcome to another Tips in 20. So as you can see there, top tips and practical strategies on how to thrive in a life altered by your child's disability, diagnosis, or additional needs. We're going to get loads of pinging now, don't worry about that. So just so you know who I am, if you are new to me, I am mum to Oliver and Harry. Harry's there on the screen. Harry has golden heart syndrome, hence his wonderfully, beautifully unique appearance. And he's also autistic. I've been a teacher for this is my 17th year, although I leave this year. Best-selling author of the book Our Altered Life, mentor to mums with an altered life, an advocate for parent carers in the workplace, cheeseaholic and gin lover. And I'm also the founder of Send Gin and Cheese, because I never would have joined Send Help and Support, but I would have joined Send Gin and Cheese, and I hope it was a subscription service, I think. So we've got Send Gin and Cheese, and we've got support for dads as well. So they are free Facebook communities for you to join, and please do head over there. They're wonderful spaces. So our session this evening is Send EHCP support. And I am very excited because this month's guest is none other than Heidi Mather. No, I've said that right. I've said that wrong, haven't I, after all that?
Mather. I remembered how to reminded you how to remember it as well.
Heidi Mather, you did, yes. We won't share that. Is a late identified neurodivergent adult. She's a public speaker, advocate, award-winning activist, Sunday Times bestseller, author of Your Child Is Not Broken. And the reviews for that are incredible. I know she's going to mention that shortly. Podcaster, parent to an autistic ADHD teenager herself. So she's really coming from a place of knowledge and experience. And she's passionate about empowering families in their fight to secure suitable education for their children and young people. So on that note, I'm going to stop sharing my screen and hand over to Heidi. There we go.
Great. Hi, everyone. Thanks for having me. I have also got some slides. They're not as swanky as yours, I have to say. Mine are a little bit more hodgepodge, much like me. So I don't know if you can see that. Can you see that, Charlie?
Yeah, we can. Thank you.
So yeah, I spoke with Charlie last week, and we had a chat about how I could bring value to you tonight in 20 minutes. And I will try and keep it to 20 minutes and make sure that you've got a bit of time for questions as well. My area of expertise and specialty, initially, my very, very niche, is that I support parents and carers of neurodivergent learners who might need to secure education otherwise than at school packages for their children and young people. So the majority of my client base originally were parents and carers of autistic kids who couldn't be in school because they had barriers to attendance. And the reason I do that is because my son Theo, who Charlie mentioned, is autistic ADHD. Crashed out of school when he was 15. We didn't know that he was neurodivergent. We didn't know that I was neurodivergent. We thought we were normals. It turns out there's no such thing as we know, but also, you know, apple doesn't fall very far from the tree. And it became very clear very quickly that the reason that I hadn't spotted that he was different to other children is because he is just like me. I also struggled in school. So that was 4 years ago. He was very unwell at the time. He hit autistic burnout, and we faced a pretty mammoth battle to try and get him the right provision. He wasn't able to be in school for over 18 months. He had some time in a pupil referral unit where he finished his GCSEs, and then he had a year of education otherwise than at school. And during that time, it became apparent that there was very little decent information for parents and carers who were like us. So on the back of that, because I'm a bit of a tell everybody everything, I'm a massive oversharer, I wrote a book. It did all right. It became a Sunday Times bestseller. It's available in paperback, in all good booksellers, and on Amazon. And it's republished recently, well, in May this year, by Bluebird, which is a imprint of Pan Macmillan. So now I do work supporting parents and carers in the same way that we needed support, but also more broadly, I help parents and carers of all children with additional needs understand the EHCP process. So that's what I'm going to show you a little bit of tonight, is how EHCPs work and kind of do a bit of myth busting. So with that in mind, I was talking with people in my community tonight before I came on, and we were talking about the things that are kind of the most common myths that people have around EHCPs. Just to give you an overview, The EHCP, it stands for Education, Health and Care Plan, and it's the means by which parents and carers in England can make an application for their local authority to draw up a legally binding document that specifies the needs of their child or young person and the provision required to meet those needs. An EHCP can be in place in a mainstream setting, in a specialist setting. You can have an EHCP if you're a home eder. You can also have an EHCP with a bespoke setting like we were talking about with education otherwise than at school. I think one of the most common myths with EHCPs, and you can tell me in the comments if this is your experience, is that before you have a child who means that you have an altered life, you perhaps assume incorrectly that when you land in school or when the difficulties that your child is having present themselves in school, that there will be this kind of gathering of people around you who know what they're doing and things will happen and you'll get support. And I think a lot of us will know that that's not generally the way this works. So the biggest myth for me was before I realised Theo was autistic and that he might need support in school, I thought it would be a case of trotting along to the Senko and saying, oh, we think he's autistic. And the Senko going, oh yeah, us too. Let's get him an EHCP. It didn't go like that. It went, I think he might be autistic. And the Senko went, nah, he's not autistic. He makes good eye contact. No, he's not autistic. He's very popular in school. So we had all of that to unpick and to navigate our way around. So the first thing that I think that people assume is that EHCPs are kind of an automatic process, and they're certainly not. And linked to that, I guess, is the second myth, which is that people, all of us actually, I think, before we know how this system works, assume that in order to get an EHCP, the school or college need to make an application for you, and you need to have gone through a number of plan, do, review cycles before that happens. Now, in an ideal world, when we've got a child who presents early and maybe needs those plan, do, review cycles, whereby we think about what they might need, we make some reasonable adjustments, we see whether that's working, we review it, we go back, that may be suitable. But for many of our children and young people whose presentation comes on quickly, or whose needs present differently very quickly, or who have a disability that either comes overnight, or they have challenges that present out of the blue because of something that's happened in their lives, or they've changed a setting, so they've gone from primary to secondary, and there isn't the opportunity to do that plan, do, review process. The myth being that you need school to make an application for you for an EHCP, and that's not the case at all. You can ask your Senko or another member of staff in your school to make an application for the local authority to look at whether your child might need an EHCP or not. But there's no legal requirement for you to do that. And as a parent or carer, you can make a parental request for an EHC needs assessment. You don't have to have support from school to do that, and the school do not have to do it. So we have a lot of parents in our community who are being told by their Senko, let's just wait till after Easter, let's just see how we get on. If you know that your child might need additional support through an EHCP, one of the things I spend a lot of time telling parents is trust your gut and go ahead and make a parental application for a needs assessment. The third thing that is a really common misunderstanding with EHCPs is that they're only available to children who are academically behind or who are struggling, with the curriculum compared to their peers, and that's not the case. An EHCP looks at 4 broad areas of need. It looks at cognition and learning, which is whether your child might have learning differences or not, but it also looks at physical and sensory needs. So does your child have sensory differences? If they're autistic, that might be the case, or do they have physical needs related to their disability? It also looks at communication and interaction. Do they need support out with what would normally be available in order to be able to communicate with their peers and other people in the school, or in order to understand what's going on? Again, autistic kids often have that, but also children with other disabilities may experience that. And the fourth one is, do they have issues around social, emotional and mental health? So those are the 4 broad areas of need. You do not need for your child to be academically behind, or, I hear often that people are being told until your kid's 2 years behind, you won't get an EHCP. It's not true. The legal test for an EHC needs assessment being granted is your child has or may have special educational needs and may need provision through an EHCP. That's it. Now, lots of local authorities do apply other policies unlawfully to back education, health and care plan needs assessments, but you do have the right of appeal, and a lot of our families find themselves that if they do get refused an assessment and they appeal, immediately that refusal for assessment is overturned. So they're the three big myths, I think, that I hear the most in my community. I'd be interested to know what you've heard or whether you want to check anything. We'll have time for that, I think. I wanted to share with you some top tips for if you're thinking about or if you have an EHCP already. I think a lot of us who already have EHCPs, we spend a bit of time getting them in the first place, and then we find ourselves settling for maybe plans that aren't quite suitable or don't quite fully reflect our child's needs. And what I say a lot to parents is you have an annual review with your EHCP every 12 months. You go through the assessment period. So you make a request for an EHC needs assessment. There is an assessment period of 14 weeks. At the end of that 14 weeks, the local authority will give you either, they'll issue a plan, they'll give you a draft to check, or they'll tell you they're not going to issue a plan. At all of those stages, you do have the right to appeal if things are refused, and then you'll have a final plan. And what often happens is that parents are so tired by that stage that they just take what's given to them. And one of the things I do a lot of work on is helping parents and carers understand that in as much as you worked hard to get that initial EHCP, your annual review every year should be as serious a process, and you should use that to your advantage to assess whether your child is making the progress towards the outcomes that are listed in their plan, whether the outcomes need to be updated, whether you need to add new information. I've got parents in my community who've got EHCPs that haven't changed for 10 years. That's not helpful to their child. It's not helpful to the people supporting their child in school or college. And it's a recipe for disaster, really. So these are my top tips, regardless of where you are in the EHCP process, whether you have not yet applied, whether you're in appeal, whether you're at draft stage, whether you're heading for annual review. These are my tips. The first one is get organised. It seems really obvious, but it's very easy to lose track of things. One of the things I say to parents and carers is it's really helpful to have a separate email address that's just for dealing with SEND stuff and EHCP stuff and school stuff. So your child's parents' name at gmail.com, for example. Second one is get yourself educated. There are hundreds of groups and places, some of them great, like Charlie's Community, some of them not so hot, so shop around, but make sure you're getting good quality information and check everything you are told. So have a space like Charlie's Community or like other communities. I have a Facebook group with 10,000 families in there. If you want to check stuff, you're welcome to do that. But so often people are told things by SENCOs, professionals, ed psychs, that it's not accurate. And they're told things by local authority caseworkers that is not accurate. And it's not because people are intentionally misleading you. It's because within local authorities, there are many, many unlawful policies and practices that work against you getting a good EHCP. So get yourself educated, look for good information. A really good place for that is the IPSEA website, IPSEA. I signpost everyone there, and it's a great resource for getting everything you need EHCP wise. Get as much evidence as you can, and I mean, like, as you're ongoing, you will, if you have a child with additional needs, you will have mountains of paperwork, but there are all kinds of different pieces of paperwork in there. Some of them are helpful and some of them are not. Whilst you're going through the process of getting an EHCP, or once you have an EHCP, be thinking about every piece of paper that comes through your hands. What does this evidence about what my child needs and what my child's challenges are? And get into the habit of filing them somewhere so you can put your hands on them easily, so that when you come to annual review, you've got good information. Get support. It is an intensely stressful situation having a child with disabilities or additional needs, and it can feel very lonely. And I know that you have found a lovely community here, but it's very important that you lean into that community. It's very important that you spend time with people who get it. And that's why I wanted to come and speak to Charlie's Community, because I can see that there's that happening here. You cannot put a price on having other people around you who have that shared experience. It saves you so much time and effort and heartache, so you're not having to have the same conversations over and over and over again with people who don't have children with disabilities. Get objective. If you are in a process of getting an EHCP, it can be quite an adversarial process. It can feel quite fighty. It's very easy to feel like things are personal. They're not usually. On the odd occasion they are, but usually it's not personal. But by its nature, having people talk about your child in deficit-based language and tell you that they can't have things when you know that they should have them and they're entitled to them, and it's desperately unfair that they're not having them, is very easy to take it personally. So find places where you can scream into pillows and tell other people how unfair you find it, but stay objective when you're in the process. Get absolutely everything in writing, even if you've got an amazing Senko or teacher or head of year or someone who's supporting you, who you're having conversations with, who things are moving on a pace and you feel like you're getting lots of support. Make sure you get absolutely everything in writing, because you will forget what was said and you also may need to refer back to it. So my top tip there is, what's up? I'm doing a webinar, sweetheart. Go away. You can tell me after. Okay. Something very funny happened on his walk. Yeah, so if you have a phone call, for example, follow it up with an email saying, I just want to check that conversation we just had. These are the things we talked about. This is what was agreed. These are the action points. Can you just let me know if that isn't accurate? Same for conversations in the playground. Just make sure you have a paper trail for absolutely everything, because memory can be very unreliable. And going back to the thing about evidence, it's really important that you have a paper trail for everything and you're able to evidence what is being agreed, what's being tried, especially if you feel that later down the line you might need an EHCP, or you might need to make changes to your existing plan. And my final tip is get really, really good at self-care. Self-care doesn't necessarily mean bubble baths, spa days. I mean, like often, like for many of us, having a pee with the door shut would be a luxury, right? So facials, massages are pretty much off the table. But self-care does mean understanding your own triggers. It means understanding what your strengths are. It means knowing when you need to ask for help, and it means giving yourself a break. One of the best pieces of self-care advice I ever had, and I give it to all my families, is now that you've got an email address that is just for dealing with stuff for your child or young person, do not check that email inbox after 12 o'clock on a Friday unless you know you have to and you're waiting for something. Don't let emails that are fired off by people clearing their desks at 4 o'clock on a Friday afternoon that maybe aren't phrased in the most compassionate way, or they don't give you all the information that you need. Don't let those emails ruin your weekend and your family time. If you have weekends and family time, lots of us don't, but get really good at carving out time with your family and time away from the mountains of paperwork, whatever that looks like. Even if that is family time, is you're downstairs, they're upstairs on their PlayStation, your partner's in the garage tinkering, whatever it is that's going on, but time away from the bureaucracy, the red tape, the paperwork. That was whistle stop, Charlie. I hope that's okay. People do ask me all the time how Theo is now. He's fine, you heard him. He's still autistic and ADHD as heck. But he did return to education. He's now studying for a post-16 qualification in animal management, and he's just been offered a place at university. So he is doing phenomenally well and he's very happy, and he is recovered from his burnout and has incredible skills of self-advocacy and has really come a long way because of the support that we had for him, none of which would have been possible without an EHCP, which is why I'm so passionate about helping people understand how to get them. If you are anywhere in the EHCP process and you need some support, we have got a programme. It starts on Sunday. It's called the EHCP Success Accelerator. It's intended for anyone at any stage of the process. So whether you haven't even made an application for a needs assessment, right through to if you're in tribunal and you're headed for appeal, if you've got an annual review coming up, if you need to think about whether your plan is accurate or not, if you feel like your plan doesn't accurately reflect your child's needs, we cover it in you can hear I'm a bit of a fast deliverer. We cover it everything in 7 days. So I give you like a crash course, proper brain dump from my head into your head for everything you could ever need to know for the EHCP process. We start that on Sunday, it runs for a week, and then we're together in a Facebook group for 2 months until the end of March. And then you have access to all those trainings as well until the end of July. If you're interested in that, details are on my website. It's £349 for the 6-month programme. And that's it. Questions? That's the quickest I've ever done that, Charlie. I hope that wasn't overwhelming people.
No, it was fine. I was busy scribbling notes myself. I think for me, I absolutely love the setting up a specific email address ID, and nobody ever mentioned that to me when Harry was going through his EHCP process and special schools, and we were doing all that.
The game changer.
Completely, like nobody's ever said that. I will so be quoting you on that. And having the boundaries around checking that the access to that email address is something that's really important. I know as a teacher, that's something that teachers in particular really struggle with. I'm sure everybody's the same in business. But then the other thing that I really loved was the feeling of it being personal. So I see things from both sides, because obviously I've been a teacher for a long time, nearly 20 years in education altogether. So I see that it's not personal, but I've also got a child that's got significant needs, both learning, communication, social, personal care. And it is really difficult not to take it personally. So I think that was a beautiful insight there, and a huge reminder for people as well. I think is really important. So I don't know if anybody has got any questions. You just want to pop them in the chat if you do. Let me just
turn my screen off so I can see everybody.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Sometimes there's a little bit of a delay on the, if you have, you can pop your hand up. We've got a reactions bar at the bottom. But I think
everyone's just like that because I've just brain dumped all over them.
They've got writer's cramp from making all the notes like I have. I think what I'll do, I'll pause the recording here. If anybody does want to get in touch with you after watching this on replay, maybe, is the website the best place to do that? I know you're on Instagram as well, aren't you, and Facebook? What are
my Instagram and Facebook inboxes are rammed, so you'll get lost in there. The best thing to do is to come to my website, HeidiMaver.com. If you can't find me, search Your Child Is Not Broken or search EOTAS Matters. Just put Heidi Send and you'll find me. I come up quite high in the ratings because not many people are called Heidi, not because I'm excellent. And if you go to my website, if you go to my website, there's a page on there called For Families, which has all of the onward signposting, and you can contact me there. Also our Facebook community, if you go to the For Families page, and someone's asking me there. If you I'll put a link in the comments if I can. Oops, can I get the link? If you come and find us on Facebook, there's a couple of joining questions to get in, but it's a free Facebook community. We've got 10,000 members. I'll pop a link in the chat.
What's the name of the group for people that are watching on replay?
It's very snappily called EOTAS/Personal Budgets via EHCP UK in association with EOTAS Matters. And the reason it's called that is because people search for all those keywords, and I didn't want to give it a swanky name that people wouldn't find. So if you just search EOTAS, EOTAS/Personal Budgets, you'll find us.
Okay, amazing. We've got another question here from Fiona. When we're putting examples, how personal should we go for filling in the forms? Are there any tips on how much information you should be giving? And I know that's difficult when you don't want to be betraying their privacy, and you want to be respectful to your children and young people. So any tips on that one?
So when you're making an application for an EHC needs assessment, what you want to be thinking about is, how do you demonstrate that your child has or may have special educational needs? And how do you demonstrate that they might need support through an EHCP? So what you're thinking about is not necessarily diagnoses, but what do you know that they're struggling with currently? And you don't have to go into too much detail, but you can say things like, for example, my child finds it incredibly difficult to sit still in class because they have an ADHD profile, and because of that, we think they need some extra support around that. We need some accommodations beyond which is available through reasonable adjustments, for example. People often say to me, should I send all the history? You don't need to. For an EHC needs assessment request, it's literally has or may have special educational needs and may need an EHCP. When you get into the assessment stage, so once you've had an EHC needs assessment granted, there's a 14-week period. During that period, your child will be seen by an educational psychologist. It's part of the requirements, but you'll also be asked to submit parental views. And it's a section of the EHCP, it's section A, where you can list everything you need to do, everything you need to, you can share everything you feel like someone who picks up the plan needs to know about your child as like a bit of an overview. So you can speak about what they love, what they're great at, how to get the best out of them, how to support them, but you can also speak about what they might find find challenging. But you don't need to do that in your needs assessment request. The only requirement at needs assessment level is has or may have special educational needs, may need support through an EHCP.
Okay, lovely, thank you. Great, thank you very much. Right, I'm going to pause it there. Thank you to everyone for joining us. We will stay on the call.